Russia's already failed in the sense that what they were trying to accomplish initially was to erase Ukraine from the map, to subsume it into Russia, to eliminate its existence as an independent state. That's failed, and it's not going to succeed.
Do you accept that the laptop is not Russian disinformation?
Again, from my perspective, I'm not engaging in politics. I've got a lot on my agenda, things that we've just talked about, trying to help the Ukrainians in the Russian aggression against them, engaging with allies and partners around the world, and dealing with some of the challenges posed by China. We have a situation now in Sudan that's fully occupied my time, so that's where my focus is.
This is my video update from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Tuesday, May 3rd. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with that interview from Fox News of Anthony Blinken, where the U.S. Secretary of State says that Russia has failed in erasing Ukraine. And so for Anthony Blinken, Russia has effectively lost the conflict in Ukraine because Russia has not achieved its goals and will not achieve its goals of erasing the state of Ukraine. Anthony Blinken also said in the interview that a counteroffensive is indeed coming in the next couple of weeks. Quote, at the end of the day, their success on the battlefield is the best and perhaps the fastest route to negotiations that will bring about a just and sustainable peace. So for Anthony Blinken, Russia has already failed in its goal of erasing the state of Ukraine, and now all that remains is the big spring counteroffensive, which will deliver the decisive defeat to the Russian military and the Putin government, and will force the Russians to accept whatever peace terms the collective West presents them. That is the plan, according to the U.S. Secretary of State. And whenever Anthony Blinken comes out with statements like this, just keep in mind that he is projecting. That is all he is doing, projecting, because the actual goals of this proxy war with Russia for the collective West was not the erasure of the state of Ukraine. It was indeed the erasure of the Russian Federation. The goals of this conflict was the dismemberment, the breaking apart of the Russian Federation into 6 or 7 micro-states. And this was going to happen starting with economic shock and awe sanctions, which would lead to the crippling of the Russian economy, which would lead to people getting out onto the streets, and some sort of regime change, color revolution would occur. And this would overthrow the government of Russian President Vladimir Putin and would usher in a new government, which would then move towards the breakup of the Russian Federation. This was pretty much the plan that the neocons and people like Blinken, Sullivan, and Newland had in mind when they prevented the ceasefire at the end of March and told the Zelensky regime to fight on, and the collective West would provide all the money and the weapons that the Zelensky regime needed. And the conflict in Ukraine shifted from a conflict between Russia and Ukraine at the end of March and moved towards a conflict between Russia and a NATO proxy. And that was the plan, the breakup of the Russian Federation. So everything that Blinken said in this Fox News interview was projection, not about erasing the state of Ukraine. This has always been about erasing the Russian Federation. Blinken was also asked about the Hunter Biden laptop and the 51 Intel officials and the document that they signed, which Blinken put together in order to provide cover for Joe Bidenopoulos in the 2020 presidential elections. And when Blinken was asked about his involvement in this document, which claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, Blinken decided to not answer the question. He just completely ignored the question and just deflected and said, you know what, I have got all kinds of other stuff that's keeping me busy, like Russia and Ukraine and China, and now we have a conflict in Sudan. So, I'm not going to talk about the 51 Intel officials' documents saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation. I'm not going to talk about that because I'm a very, very busy man and I have other things that I need to focus on. So that was Blinken's reply to the Hunter Biden laptop question. Now, yesterday, Kirby came out with a statement claiming that the Russian military had lost 100,000 soldiers in Bakhmut, 100,000 plus casualties in Bakhmut. And I believe that Kirby broke it down to 20,000 killed and 80,000 injured in Bakhmut from December up till today. That was the statement from John Kirby, who's the National Security Council spokesperson or something like that. He has a really, really long title, but that was Kirby's statement yesterday. And today we have, or actually yesterday as well, not today, yesterday, we had a statement from the Russian Defense Minister, Sergei Shoigu, who weighed in on the casualty number debate. And he said that over 15,000 Ukrainian troops were killed or injured in April. That is a statement by the Defense Minister of Russia, Sergei Shoigu. According to Shoigu, Ukrainian troops suffered heavy losses despite unprecedented military assistance by Western powers. The minister was reporting developments in the conflict on Tuesday during a meeting of top military officials. So Kirby claims 100,000 Russian casualties in Bakhmut from December up until today. And the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Shoigu comes out with his casualty numbers, which are 15,000 plus, more than 15,000 in April for the Ukraine military. So you have Kirby's estimates of 100,000 plus in Bakhmut from December up until today, and you now have the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu with his casualty numbers for April. Olaf Scholz, where is Olaf Scholz? Where is Olaf Scholz? Well, Olaf Scholz, he turned up the other day and he came out with this statement. He said that Western countries have introduced a rule according to which Ukraine cannot attack Russian territory with the help of weapons supplied by NATO, the collective West, and Germany. He said, and I quote, "It is very important for us that the weapons we supply and with which Ukraine can defend themselves are not used to attack Russian territories." So Olaf Scholz is claiming that the German weapons, including the Leopard tanks that are being provided to Ukraine or have been provided to Ukraine, are only going to be used for Ukraine to defend itself, and they will not be used to attack Russia or to attack Russian territory. Of course, when Olaf Scholz uses the word Russian territory, you always got to keep in mind that for the collective West, for Germany, they do not recognize Crimea as Russian territory. So an attack on Crimea for Olaf Scholz and for Germany is absolutely acceptable. But we have had quite an uptick in Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory, terrorist type of attacks, sabotage type of attacks on Russian territory. And I'm not talking about Crimea. I'm talking about Belgorod and Bryansk as well. We have had an uptick in attacks in these areas in Russia. And in the past 2 days, we have actually had two consecutive days of train derailments. And yesterday we had a train derailment in the Bryansk region. The Bryansk region is a region which borders not only Ukraine, but also Belarus. And yesterday, a Russian freight train derailed in this region. This appears to be a sabotage attack from the Ukraine military or the SBU or the Zelensky regime, perhaps with the help of NATO and the collective West. Who knows? But this is not some sort of accident. This is indeed some sort of sabotage that is occurring in Russian territory. Reuters reported, based on local sources, that an explosion derailed a freight train for the second day in a row in a Russian region bordering Ukraine on Tuesday, sending both the locomotive and some cars off the tracks, authorities said. Now, I don't think there were any casualties, not in the derailment from the other day, from a couple of days ago, and not in the derailment from yesterday, but you can definitely see that the Ukraine military or the SBU are definitely escalating their sabotage efforts in Russian territory. And the Ukraine Minister of Defense, Mr. Reznikov, he issued a statement yesterday, a very bizarre statement, to be quite honest, where he said that Ukraine will take Crimea without a fight. According to the Ukraine Defense Minister, Ukraine plans to take Crimea without a fight by military political means, first blocking supply routes and firing drones at military infrastructure. And then Reznikov, and this is where his statement got really bizarre, then Reznikov hinted at some sort of very large terrorist attack happening on Russian territory or in Crimea or Donbass, which would force Russia to end the conflict in Ukraine. And here's what Reznikov said, and I quote, "Let's say something happens to a power plant, a hydroelectric power plant, a nuclear power plant. There will be risks for the population, and this will require immediate attention from the government, the accumulation of resources, including soldiers," Reznikov said. This could force Russia to end hostilities by making a goodwill gesture. So according to the Ukraine defense minister, Ukraine is going to take Crimea, and then we're going to have some very, very large terrorist attack, terrorist incident, nuclear power plant, hydroelectric power plant. Who knows? But something very big is going to happen, which will force Russia to just call it quits. This is according to the Ukraine Defense Minister Reznikov. Very bizarre statement, a very troubling statement. I don't think that people should just discount Reznikov's statements like right off the bat, because Reznikov, he's the defense minister that sits in on all of the meetings that take place in Germany at the Ramstein air base. He's the guy that's constantly talking to the neocons in Newland and Austin and all of these people. So, Reznikov is obviously hearing things, or he's hearing these people kick around certain ideas which they believe could lead to a Russian defeat. And so he's it's my opinion that he's just repeating many of the things that he probably hears in these private neocon collective West conversations. Anyway, that is what Reznikov said. Now, an update on the grain issue, the food fights that took place a couple of weeks ago between various EU member states and Ukraine. The EU member states that had an issue with Ukraine grain and food were Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and who else? And I believe Romania as well, and Bulgaria. So you had 5 EU member states that were basically blocking the export from Ukraine and the import of Ukrainian food into their country. And yesterday we had the news that the European Commission has banned Ukrainian grain exports to those 5 countries. Now, the ban covers wheat, corn, oilseed, and sunflower. That is what the ban covers. The European Commission announced that it has set restrictions on the import of Ukrainian agricultural products until June 5th in order to alleviate the problem that arose with excess grain in Bulgaria, Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia. The EU's executive body announced that during that period, Ukrainian grain can be sold in any other EU member state, except for the mentioned 5, which complained that the cheap price of Ukrainian grain harms their farmers. Reuters reported not only was the Ukrainian grain cheap, but it was reported that the food coming from Ukraine was also toxic. It was not of good quality. So there you have it. Until June 5th, which is not very long, about a month, almost a month. And until June 5th, various agricultural products will be banned in 5 EU member states. All the other EU members are absolutely free to import the Ukrainian agricultural products. From what I understand, the Zelensky regime was very upset about this decision from the European Commission, and I think they said something like this will cost them 100 million euros. So it looks like Zelensky has taken a 100 million euro hit to his wallet. Zelensky's not going to be happy about this. Not happy at all. Let's do a couple of more stories, and then we'll get to our clown world. And let's do another update, this one on Putin's trip in August to South Africa for the BRICS meeting. It looks like Putin will have to attend this meeting via video because we are getting reports, and this one is coming from the Sunday Times, that South Africa is quietly telling Putin to not attend the BRICS summit and to opt for a video attendance to the summit. Quote, "We have no option not to arrest Putin. If he comes here, we will have to arrest him," said a spokesman for the South African government. And the Sunday Times article has the title, "SA's Quiet Push for Virtual Putin Visit to Solve ICC Arrest Warrant Dilemma." So it looks like that there are forces in South Africa that will push the South African government to do as the collective West orders it to do. And if Putin were to travel to South Africa for the BRICS summit, he would indeed be arrested. And I said this in a video a couple of weeks ago that whatever debate is going on in South Africa as to how to deal with this BRICS summit meeting and Putin's attendance and the ICC warrant, I said a couple of weeks ago that even if South Africa gives Putin the green light, Putin should not travel to South Africa in person for this meeting. You know what? Send Lavrov. Send Lavrov. And Putin can attend via video. I think that's the best solution because my thinking is that, you know what? These people in the collective West, they're blowing up pipelines. They're blowing up pipelines for that deliver oil and gas, that deliver gas to Germany. They're blowing up pipelines, and, you know, they would absolutely take down the plane of Vladimir Putin if he was flying from Russia to South Africa. That's a long flight. And my thinking there is that if these guys are blowing up Nord Stream, then I don't think they would have any problem trying to bring down the plane of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Even if it meant the start of World War III, I can definitely see Newland and Sullivan saying, you know what, let's bring that plane down. Let's force that plane to land. I can absolutely see it. So my thinking on all of this is just don't even debate it anymore. Send Lavrov. Putin can attend via video and just leave it there. Why risk it? Why risk it? In France, you have protests every day, it seems. So May 1st, huge protests, hundreds of arrests, from what I understand. A lot of people were injured, and just a complete mess in France. I mean, the protests do not stop. Every day you have protests in France. Macron is kind of like a no-show. I mean, he's almost in hiding, it seems. He's either in hiding when he's in France. When he does venture out into the streets, he's getting encircled or heckled, or sometimes they throw stuff at him, or he's traveling outside of France. I think that Macron right now is happiest not being in France. And so these protests, they're not stopping. They could lead to some sort of big change in France. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Macron will even step down as president. Stranger things have happened, but the protests are not stopping, and the media, the collective West media, is not reporting on these protests. They're just not reporting on them. If these protests were taking place, if protests like this were taking place in Russia or in China, protests in Hong Kong, or I don't know, protests in Brazil, whatever, if these protests were taking place anywhere else outside of the collective West, this would be like never-ending news media coverage of these protests until the government collapsed. The media would be reporting on these protests until there was a government collapse. But in this case, in the case of France, they are just not reporting on these protests. Anyway, let's do a couple of clown worlds and we will wrap this video up. Let's return to Ukraine, and we had an interview with the foreign minister of Ukraine, Mr. Kuleba, and he spoke about a telephone conversation that he had with an unnamed colleague who told him that, and I quote, Ukraine decides who belongs to civilized countries and who does not. A very interesting statement from an unnamed colleague of the foreign minister of Kuleba. Quote, the foreign minister of one country called me and said, Dmitry, I spoke with one problematic country and told them that today Ukraine decides who belongs to civilized countries and who does not. If Ukraine does not give a signal that this is a normal country and with you can have business with her, then you will have problems. So Ukraine decides who belongs to civilized countries and who does not. I saw a video the other day in, I believe, Odessa, where the police in Ukraine, they tied up, they taped a girl to a tree. And I don't even know what her alleged crime was. I think maybe they say she said something that she shouldn't have said, or she shoplifted something. I don't even know what she did, but they had her on a tree and they taped her on a tree. They actually do this quite often, but this was the police in Odessa that did this to her. This is the country that is going to decide who belongs to the civilized world, the garden, who belongs to the garden and who belongs in the jungle, according to Foreign Minister Kuleba. The country that that is burning down churches and canceling media and passing laws where if you say something on social media, you could be arrested and all of these things. Anyway, this is the country that, according to Kaluba, some unnamed colleague told him that you decide who's in the garden and who's in the jungle. Was it Joseph Borrell, Jungle Joseph? Tell this to Kaluba. That's my thinking. My thinking is that this was Joseph Borrell. It sounds like something Jungle Joseph would say. In the same interview, Kaluba said that the decisive battle in Ukraine will be the one that will lead to the complete liberation of the Ukrainian territories. He also said that the decision to provide Ukraine with F-16 fighters will be tied to the results of the counteroffensive. And he said if Ukraine had the F-16 fighters today, well, then the big spring, summer, fall, winter, next spring, summer, fall, winter counteroffensive would have already taken place. It would have been much faster, Kaluba said, if they had the F-16s. So that was the interview from Kaluba, the Ukraine foreign minister. And let's do two more clown worlds. This one from Reuters. Russia, Belarus, Iran, and Myanmar not invited to King Charles's coronation, according to a UK source. So I am absolutely convinced that Belarus and Russia and Iran and Myanmar are heartbroken at the fact that they will not have a representative attending the coronation of King Charles. Absolutely heartbroken. And since we're talking about breaking hearts, how about Tinder leaving the Russian market? Tinder has finally decided, the popular dating app, to leave Russia. Tinder swipes left on Russia. The dating app is joining an exodus of Western firms from the sanctioned country. Match Group, owner of the dating app Tinder, has announced plans to leave Russia more than a year after Russia launched its military operation in Ukraine, Reuters reported on Tuesday, citing the company's annual impact reports. Quote, "We are committed to protecting human rights," Match said, explaining the move, adding, "Our brands are taking steps to restrict access to their services in Russia and will complete their withdrawal from the Russian market by June 30th, 2023. A number of digital service providers, including Spotify and Netflix, quit Russia last year. So there you have it. No more Tinder in Russia, which is actually great news for an existing Russian company or a very innovative and clever Russian entrepreneur to create a Tinder clone or a Tinder competitor and to gobble up the Russian app dating market. This is a great opportunity for someone in Russia or some company in Russia to clone out Tinder if they don't already have a Tinder clone and to become the dominant dating app in Russia. Very easy to clone Tinder. There's actually a whole bunch of developers all over the world that have Tinder clones already made and developed. You can purchase it and you can launch it in Russia. They have Tinder clones and Twitter clones and Facebook clones and Instagram clones. When it comes to replacing these social media apps, technically it's a piece of cake. The difficult part, whenever you're looking to replace these types of social media services, is getting the market share, is getting the users, because that's their advantage. Their advantage is that they have all the users already in their platform. So the minute they give up the market, the minute they give up the users, then it's really, just whoever has the better marketing and who can move quickly enough to swallow up the user base, the customers. The actual technology is out there. I mean, it's easy to create and it's easy to buy, and this is a great opportunity for someone or some entity in Russia. So I'm sure that the Russians are going to be heartbroken at the fact that Tinder is leaving the Russian market. Anyway, that is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble and BitChute, ODYSEE, and Telegram. And did I say Rockfin? And Rockfin. And we are on Tinder and Netflix and Spotify and all of the social media services. Just kidding. All right, go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.